My name is Sophia Martinez, and am 27 years old. Right now, I'm standing on the deck of a $28,000 overwater villa in the Maldives, watching my adoptive parents cry tears of pure joy as they experience luxury they never dreamed possible. 6 months ago, my biological family told me I wasn't welcome on their annual Aspen trip because I wasn't real family. They said there was limited space, but then I saw them post photos with my sister's new boyfriend, occupying what should have been my spot. Little did they know, I was about to show them what real family actually means. Before we dive into this incredible journey of betrayal, revenge, and unconditional love, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button if you believe blood doesn't always make family, and subscribe because trust me, you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, and I promise you'll understand why sometimes the most beautiful revenge is simply loving the right people with everything you've got. To understand how I ended up in paradise with the two most important people in my life, you need to know my story from the beginning. I was adopted at age 3 by Robert and Linda Martinez, a working-class couple who couldn't have children of their own. My biological parents, Margaret and Frank Whitman, were wealthy socialites who decided a toddler didn't fit their lifestyle of country club memberships and European vacations. The Martinez family didn't have much money, but they had something the Whitmans never possessed: genuine, unconditional love. Robert worked double shifts at the automotive plant, while Linda cleaned houses during the day and waited tables at night, all so they could give me every opportunity they never had. They saved every penny for my education, driving the same beat-up Honda for 15 years, wearing clothes from thrift stores, and eating generic brand groceries so I could have name-brand lunch items and not feel different from my classmates. When I graduated valedictorian from high school, they mortgaged their modest 3-bedroom home to send me to Northwestern University for marketing, never once complaining about the sacrifice. After college, I built my marketing agency from the ground up, working 18-hour days and sleeping on my office couch for the first 2 years. My adoptive parents were my biggest cheerleaders, sending care packages during my poorest months and celebrating every small victory like I'd won the Nobel Prize. By 25, I was earning 7 figures annually, managing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies and living in a penthouse downtown Chicago. Through it all, Robert and Linda remained humble, proud, and completely supportive, never asking for anything except weekly phone calls and occasional visits. Then, 2 years ago, everything changed when the Whitman family suddenly re-entered my life. They'd hired a private investigator to track my success after seeing my company featured in Forbes magazine. Margaret called my office personally, her voice dripping with fake warmth as she explained how they'd never stopped thinking about me and wanted to rebuild our relationship. Frank sent expensive flower arrangements with cards signed, "From your loving father," as if 24 years of absence could be erased with roses and guilt. Initially, I was cautiously optimistic about reconnecting with my biological family. They invited me to exclusive restaurants where meals cost more than Robert's weekly salary, introduced me to their high society friends as their successful daughter, and included me in family photos for their social media accounts. My biological sister Jessica, now 29, seemed friendly enough during our first few meetings, though I noticed her subtle digs about people who reinvent themselves and children who play dress-up in designer clothes. The Whitmans owned a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, complete with a wine cellar, tennis court, and 3-car garage filled with luxury vehicles. They belonged to the most exclusive country club in Illinois, and spent their summers in the Hamptons, their winters in Aspen, and their springs in Tuscany. During family dinners at their mansion, Margaret would regale me with stories of their travels, while Frank discussed his real estate investments and stock portfolio. They painted a picture of the life I could have had, the experiences I'd missed, and the connections that could benefit my business. But there were warning signs I chose to ignore in my desperation to belong somewhere I'd never been welcome. Jessica would make comments about how some people needed to work harder to prove they belonged in certain circles, always delivered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Frank would pepper our conversations with questions about my client list and business strategies, showing more interest in my professional connections than my personal well-being. Margaret constantly corrected my grammar, my posture, and my choice of conversation topics, claiming she wanted to help me fit in better with our kind of people. The breaking point came 3 months ago when they announced their annual family vacation tradition. For 15 years, the Whitman family had spent a week in Aspen every February, staying at a luxury ski resort and participating in winter activities that cost more money than most people earned in a year. They'd been promising to include me since we reconnected, building up my excitement about finally being part of their exclusive inner circle. Margaret even helped me shop for appropriate ski attire, spending hours at high-end boutiques selecting outfits that would photograph well for their social media documentation. Then came the group text message that shattered my illusions and changed everything forever. It was sent to the family chat on a Tuesday evening while I was working late at the office. The message, from Margaret's phone, was brutally brief. "Hi everyone, just finalizing Aspen arrangements. Unfortunately, we have limited space this year, so it's really for core family members only. Hope you understand. XOXO." I stared at my phone screen in disbelief, reading those words over and over until they burned into my memory. Limited space? Core family members only? After 2 years of building what I thought was a genuine relationship, I was being excluded from their most important annual tradition. The casual tone of the message made it even more insulting, as if my exclusion was an afterthought, a minor inconvenience they'd handled with a quick text. But the real knife to my heart came later that same week, when Jessica posted Instagram stories from their Aspen trip. There, in crystal clear photos, was her new boyfriend Marcus, whom she'd been dating for exactly 6 weeks. Laughing with my biological parents on the same ski slopes, it'd been told there was no room for me to enjoy. He occupied the bedroom that could have been mine, ate meals at the table where my chair sat empty, and participated in the family bonding I'd dreamed about for months. The betrayal was complete and absolute. They'd replaced me with a virtual stranger, someone who shared no blood, no history, and no emotional connection to their family, simply because he was dating their real daughter. The message was crystal clear. I would never truly belong, no matter how successful I became or how hard I tried to fit into their world. I was acceptable as an accessory to their social status. But when it came to genuine family inclusion, I remained an outsider, looking in through their perfectly curated social media posts. While the Whitman family was busy flaunting their wealth and exclusivity, my real parents were quietly facing the biggest challenge of their lives. 3 months before the Aspen debacle, Robert had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease after months of tremors and balance issues that Linda had begged him to investigate. At 62, this proud man who'd worked with his hands, his entire life was suddenly confronting a future where his body might betray him, and the medical bills were already mounting despite their modest health insurance coverage. Linda, now 60, had immediately picked up extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse, sometimes pulling 16-hour days to help cover the cost of Robert's medications and neurologist appointments. I discovered during one of our weekly phone calls that she'd been skipping lunch most days to save money, claiming she wasn't hungry when I knew she was sacrificing her own nutrition to afford his prescription drugs. The woman who'd always insisted I eat vegetables and take vitamins was denying herself basic meals to care for her husband. During a surprise visit to their home, I found stack after stack of medical bills on their kitchen table, some marked past due in red ink. Robert tried to shuffle them away when he saw me looking, his pride preventing him from admitting how dire their financial situation had become. But the numbers told the story he couldn't. Nearly $15,000 in out-of-pocket medical expenses in just 3 months, with more specialist appointments and tests scheduled for the coming weeks. What broke my heart most was discovering they'd taken out a second mortgage on their modest ranch-style home to pay for my college education years earlier, and they were still making payments on that debt. Their house, which they'd bought as newlyweds 40 years ago, had been their sanctuary and their security, but they'd risked it all to give me opportunities they'd never had. Now, with Robert's reduced work hours due to his condition and mounting medical bills, they were struggling to make ends meet while maintaining the cheerful facade they thought protected me from worry. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me that while the Whitmans spent $20,000 on a single week's vacation, my real parents were rationing medications and skipping meals. Robert had worked 43 years without taking a real vacation, always claiming they preferred staycations and weekend drives to expensive trips. Linda had never owned a piece of jewelry worth more than $50, always insisting that practical purchases were more important than luxuries she'd never wear anyway. But I knew the truth they'd hidden from me my entire life. They'd never traveled because every extra dollar went toward my future. They'd never bought luxury items because my school supplies, sports equipment, and college fund took priority. They'd never indulged in the experiences other couples their age enjoyed because raising me had been their greatest adventure, their most important investment, their proudest accomplishment. During that kitchen table conversation, surrounded by medical bills and mortgage statements, Linda pulled out a worn photo she'd kept hidden in her jewelry box for 30 years. It was a faded brochure for the Maldives, something she'd torn from a travel magazine decades ago when they were young newlyweds, dreaming of exotic destinations they'd never be able to afford. Robert had kept it in his wallet for years as a reminder of dreams deferred but never abandoned, a symbol of the life they might have had if children hadn't changed their priorities completely. I used to imagine what it would be like to swim in water so clear you could see the bottom, Linda whispered, tracing the edges of the photograph with fingers roughened by decades of hard work. I'd picture us walking on those white sand beaches, eating fancy food we couldn't pronounce, and watching sunsets from one of those huts over the water. But then you came to us, and suddenly everything else seemed less important than making sure you had everything you needed to succeed. Robert nodded, his slight tremor making his wedding ring tap against the table as he reached for her hand. "We never regretted it for a second," he said firmly, his voice still strong despite his physical struggles. "You were our miracle, our purpose, our greatest joy. Watching you graduate, build your business, become the incredible woman you are today, that's worth more than any vacation could ever be. We got to travel through your successes, experience adventure through your achievements, and see the world through your eyes." Their unconditional love and endless sacrifice stood in stark contrast to the Whitmans' conditional affection and selfish exclusion. While my biological family judged my worth based on convenience and social status, my real parents measured my value in pride, love, and gratitude for the privilege of raising me. The difference was so clear, so profound, that I couldn't understand how I'd ever been fooled by the Whitmans' shallow attempts at relationship building. That night, as I drove home from their modest house to my downtown penthouse, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. If the Whitmans wanted to show me what family exclusion felt like, I would show them what family inclusion actually meant. If they thought $20,000 on a ski vacation demonstrated wealth, I would demonstrate what real abundance looked like when shared with people who deserved it. If they believed blood relations determined family bonds, I would prove that love, sacrifice, and loyalty created connections deeper than any genetic tie. The plan forming in my mind was audacious, expensive, and absolutely perfect. I was going to give Robert and Linda the dream vacation they'd sacrificed for my future, the luxury experience they'd never imagined possible, the recognition and celebration they'd earned through decades of selfless love. And I was going to document every moment, share every smile, and show the world what real family looked like when money was invested in the right people for the right reasons. My final awakening to the Whitmans' true character came at their annual charity gala, an exclusive event that cost $500 per plate and raised money for underprivileged children. The irony of wealthy people paying premium prices to help disadvantaged kids while treating their own adopted family member as a second-class citizen wasn't lost on me, but I attended hoping to finally feel like a legitimate part of their social circle. Margaret had insisted I wear a specific designer dress she'd selected, claiming it would photograph better for the society pages and help me represent the family appropriately. She'd also arranged for her personal stylist to do my hair and makeup, ensuring I looked the part of a successful Whitman daughter rather than the working-class Martinez girl I'd actually been raised to be. The transformation process felt more like preparation for a performance than getting ready for a family event. During the cocktail hour, Margaret paraded me around to her social circle like a prized possession, introducing me with the same tone she used to show off her recent kitchen renovation or new handbag collection. "This is our Sophia," she would say to each group of perfectly coiffed women, Our little project that worked out so beautifully. You know, we gave her up for adoption years ago, but look how wonderfully she's turned out. We always knew she had potential, and her success just proves that good breeding shows through, doesn't it? Each introduction felt like a knife twist, reducing my entire life's work to evidence of their superior genetics while completely ignoring Robert and Linda's role in shaping who had become. The women would nod approvingly, making comments about how lucky I was to have been reclaimed by my biological family, and how wonderful it must be to finally know where I truly belonged. No one asked about my adoptive parents, my actual upbringing, or the people who'd had sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. Frank's behavior was even more troubling during our private conversation over dinner. Head cornered me at our assigned table, speaking in hushed tones about exciting investment opportunities that could benefit from my business connections and personal wealth. Head researched my company's client list and had specific proposals for real estate developments that he wanted me to fund using my marketing industry contacts as guarantees for success. You see, sweetheart, he said, his hand heavy on my shoulder in a way that felt more possessive than paternal. Family takes care of family. I've got this amazing development project in downtown Naperville, luxury condominiums that will triple our investment within 18 months. With your agency's reputation and my construction expertise, we could dominate the high-end housing market throughout Chicagoland. I just need about $200,000 to get started, which is pocket change for someone at your level. When I hesitated, suggesting I'd need to review detailed business plans and financial projections before considering any investment, Frank's demeanor shifted dramatically. His friendly smile became cold and calculating as he explained that real family members didn't require formal documentation when helping each other achieve success. He implied that my reluctance to immediately hand over money demonstrated a lack of trust and commitment to rebuilding our relationship. Jessica's jealousy became increasingly obvious as the evening progressed, and she consumed more champagne. She made pointed comments about people who suddenly appeared in successful families and questioned whether new money could ever truly understand old money values and traditions. When other guests complimented my business achievements, she would quickly redirect the conversation to her own accomplishments in art curation, emphasizing her degree from Yale and her connections in the European art world. It's fascinating how some people can reinvent themselves so completely, she said during one particularly uncomfortable exchange with a prominent business leader who'd expressed interest in my marketing services. I mean, Sophia's done amazingly well considering where she started, but there's something to be said for generational wealth and the confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Some things just can't be taught, you know. The most revealing moment came during the charity auction, when Frank bid $25,000 on a week-long wine tour through Tuscany, casually spending more on a single vacation package than my adoptive parents had earned in 6 months. Margaret applauded his generosity while Jessica Instagram storied the moment, all of them basking in the social recognition that came from public displays of wealth. Yet these same people had excluded me from their much cheaper Aspen trip due to limited space. Later that week, Frank called my office demanding an immediate response to his investment proposal, claiming that family emergencies required quick decision-making and that my delay was causing him to miss other opportunities. When I explained that I needed time to consult with my financial advisors and attorneys, he became aggressive and accusatory, suggesting that my success had made me too good for the family that had made me who I was. "Listen here, young lady," he said, his voice taking on a threatening tone I'd never heard before. "You wouldn't be anybody without Whitman blood running through your veins. We gave you the intelligence and drive that built your little company, and now you owe us the loyalty and support that family members provide for each other. If you can't see that, maybe you're not as smart as we thought you were." The conversation ended with Frank hanging up on me, but not before Head made it clear that my value to the family was entirely dependent on my financial usefulness and willingness to fund their lifestyle. There was no mention of love, pride in my achievements, or interest in my personal happiness. I was viewed as a resource to be exploited, an investment that should provide returns, a golden goose whose eggs belonged to them by right of biological connection. Jessica's social media activity became increasingly hostile during this period, with passive-aggressive posts about family loyalty, blood being thicker than water, and the importance of remembering where you came from. Share articles about ungrateful children and the challenges wealthy families faced from relatives who developed entitled attitudes after achieving success. The message was clear: submit to their financial demands or face social warfare designed to damage my reputation and business relationships. The final straw came when Margaret called my assistant claiming there was a family emergency requiring my immediate attention, only to ambush me with another investment pitch when I rushed to their house expecting medical drama or crisis. Shed fabricated urgency to manipulate my emotions and trap me into a financial discussion I'd been avoiding, demonstrating a level of manipulation that finally opened my eyes to their true nature. David, my biological brother, whom I'd barely gotten to know, provided the most honest assessment during a drunken confession at a family barbecue. He revealed that the entire family saw me as a useful asset whose success reflected well on their genetic legacy while providing potential funding for their increasingly expensive lifestyle. He admitted they'd only reconnected with me after learning about my business achievements and had spent considerable time planning how to best leverage my wealth and connections. "You have to understand," he slurred over his fifth beer, "Mom and Dad are used to a certain standard of living, and Jessica's art career isn't exactly paying the bills she's accumulated. When we found out how successful you'd become, it was like winning the lottery. A family member with serious money, who owed us for giving her the genetics that made success possible. It seemed like perfect timing." After months of manipulation, exclusion, and financial pressure from the Whitmans, I decided it was time to show them what real family investment looked like. My research began immediately after that final confrontation with Frank, and I was determined to create an experience so spectacular that it would demonstrate the difference between conditional love and unconditional devotion. I spent hours online researching the most exclusive resorts in the Maldives, reading reviews and comparing amenities until I found the perfect destination. Four Seasons Resort Maldives at Landagiravaru. The presidential villa, an overwater bungalow spanning nearly 4,000 square feet, featured a private beach, infinity pool, glass-bottom floors for viewing marine life, and 24-hour butler service. The cost was $28,000 for 10 days, more than double what the Whitmans had spent on their exclusive Aspen trip. But the villa rental was just the beginning of my planning process. I arranged for a private chef to prepare Robert's favorite meals with a gourmet twist, knowing his simple tastes would be elevated by professional presentation and exotic ingredients. I booked couples spa treatments for my parents, understanding that Linda had never experienced a professional massage in her 60 years of life. I scheduled sunset yacht excursions, private diving lessons, wine tastings on secluded beaches, and photography sessions to capture every moment of their joy. The initial conversation with Robert and Linda about the trip was exactly as I'd expected. They were overwhelmed, grateful, and absolutely convinced they couldn't accept such an extravagant gift from their daughter. Linda cried when I showed her the resort photos, insisting that such luxury was wasted on people like them who'd be happy with a weekend at Lake Geneva. Robert worried about the cost, the appropriateness, and whether they deserved something so far beyond their normal experiences. "Sweetheart," Linda said, her voice shaking with emotion, "this is too much. We raised you because we loved you, not because we expected to be repaid with expensive trips. We've been perfectly happy with our life exactly as it is. This money should go toward your future, your retirement, your own family someday. We can't let you spend a fortune on us." I sat them down at their kitchen table, the same table where Wed shared countless meals and conversations, where they'd helped me with homework and celebrated my achievements, where I'd learned the values that had guided my entire life. I explained that success meant nothing if it couldn't be shared with the people who'd made it possible, that money was just numbers in a bank account, unless it could create happiness for those who mattered most. "You gave me everything," I told them, my voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "You gave up your dreams so I could chase mine. You sacrificed your comfort so I could have opportunities. You invested your entire lives in my future, without asking for anything in return. This isn't repayment because what you gave me is priceless. This is celebration, recognition, and the chance for me to finally give you something that matches the joy you've given me." Robert's Parkinson's symptoms had been worsening despite medication, and his neurologist had mentioned that stress reduction and relaxation could significantly improve his quality of life. Linda's exhaustion from working double shifts was taking a visible toll on her health and spirits. They needed this vacation not just as a luxury experience, but as a medical necessity and emotional reset after months of financial and health-related stress. The practical arrangements required careful planning since neither Robert nor Linda had ever owned a passport. I expedited the application process, paying extra fees to ensure their documents would be ready within 2 weeks. The photographs for their passport applications captured their excitement and disbelief perfectly. Robert's slight tremor couldn't diminish his broad smile, and Linda's work-worn hands trembled as she held the forms that would allow her first international travel. Shopping for appropriate vacation clothing became an adventure in itself. Linda had never owned anything more expensive than a $30 dress from Target, and the idea of purchasing designer resort wear made her physically uncomfortable. I took her to Nordstrom, where patient sales associates helped her select flowing sundresses, comfortable sandals, and elegant evening wear suitable for fine dining. Watching her examine price tags with shock and try to calculate the total cost in her head reminded me how different our worlds had become. Robert's shopping experience was equally touching, as he tried on his first custom-tailored shirts and lightweight suits appropriate for tropical weather. Had worn the same style of work clothes for 4 decades and felt awkward in anything that wasn't practical and durable. The sales associate who fitted him for resort casual wear was gentle and respectful, understanding that this customer wasn't accustomed to luxury shopping but deserved the same attention as their wealthy regular clients. Medical arrangements required coordination with Robert's neurologist to ensure his medications would be available throughout the trip and that the change in climate and activity level wouldn't negatively impact his condition. I researched medical facilities in the Maldives, arranged for travel insurance that covered pre-existing conditions, and created detailed itineraries that balanced activity with rest periods to accommodate his physical limitations. My social media strategy was carefully planned to document their experience while sending a clear message to the Whitmans about what real family investment looked like. I would photograph every smile, every moment of wonder, every experience they'd never imagined possible. The contrast between their genuine joy and the Whitmans' manufactured social media presence would be obvious to anyone following both accounts. Behind the scenes, I hired a professional photographer who specialized in family travel to discreetly capture candid moments throughout the trip. I wanted documentation that went beyond tourist snapshots to create artistic images worthy of framing and cherishing forever. I arranged surprise elements for each day: sunrise yoga sessions, sunset dining on private beaches, stargazing with a marine biologist guide, and visits to local villages where they could see authentic Maldivian culture. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me as I watched the Whitmans' Aspen social media posts during this planning period. Their photos showed expensive restaurants, luxury shopping, and exclusive ski slopes, but the smiles looked forced, and the interactions seemed staged for social media consumption rather than genuine family bonding. Jessica posted constantly about the amazing family time and incredible memories, but her captions read like advertising copy rather than authentic emotion. Frank's posts focused primarily on demonstrating wealth, expensive wine selections, premium ski equipment, first-class travel accommodations, and exclusive access to venues that reinforced their social status. Margaret's contributions emphasized designer outfits and luxury amenities, ensuring their followers understood exactly how much money they were spending and how exclusive their experiences were. None of their content reflected genuine connection, shared joy, or appreciation for time together. The contrast between their materialistic displays and my parents' simple gratitude for everyday blessings became the foundation for my approach to our Maldives adventure. While the Whitmans used money to buy social status and temporary pleasures, I would use resources to create lasting memories and demonstrate authentic love for people who'd earned my devotion through decades of sacrifice and support. As departure day approached, Robert and Linda's excitement became infectious, spreading to their neighbors, friends, and extended family members who'd watched them struggle financially while maintaining dignity and generosity toward others. Their church congregation was thrilled about their upcoming adventure, and Linda's co-workers at the hospital contributed to a small travel fund for souvenirs and incidental expenses, understanding that these two people deserved recognition for their lifetime of service to others. The night before we left, I found Robert sitting in his workshop looking at the faded Maldives brochure he'd carried for 30 years. His tremor was more pronounced due to excitement, but his eyes were bright with anticipation and disbelief that his impossible dream was about to become reality. He'd never imagined that the little girl they'd adopted would grow up to give them experiences beyond their wildest imagination, and his gratitude was humbling and inspiring. Departure day arrived with a mixture of excitement and disbelief that characterized every moment of Robert and Linda's first international adventure. I picked them up at 5 a.m. for our flight to Chicago O'Hare, where we'd connect to Dubai before the final leg to Mail. Linda had packed and repacked her new suitcase 3 times, worried about forgetting something important or bringing inappropriate items for such an exotic destination. The airport experience began their transformation from practical Midwestern couple to pampered luxury travelers. It booked first-class seats for the entire journey, knowing that Robert's Parkinson's would make long flights difficult in cramped economy seating and wanting Linda to experience the level of service she'd provided others throughout her nursing career without ever receiving herself. Robert's face when he saw the first-class cabin was priceless. He examined the leather seats that converted into full beds, the personal entertainment systems, and the extensive meal menus with the wonder of a child experiencing Christmas morning. Linda kept asking the flight attendants if they were certain we belonged in this section, unable to believe that such luxury was intended for people like them. During the 14-hour flight to Dubai, Linda documented every meal, every amenity, and every view from the window with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never expected to travel beyond neighboring states. She wrote in a journal she'd purchased specifically for the trip, recording details about the food quality, the staff kindness, and her disbelief that this was actually happening to her. The Dubai airport layover provided another layer of culture shock, as they encountered international travelers, duty-free shopping beyond their imagination, and architecture that seemed designed to overwhelm visitors with its scale and luxury. Linda bought postcards to send to her work friends, while Robert marveled at the engineering required to create such a massive indoor space. The final flight to Mail introduced them to the crystal-clear waters and scattered islands that would be their home for 10 days. Linda pressed her face against the airplane window like an excited child, gasping at the impossible blue of the Indian Ocean and the white sand beaches that looked exactly like the faded brochure photos she'd treasured for decades. The seaplane transfer from Mail to our resort provided the most spectacular introduction to paradise either of them could have imagined. Flying low over coral reefs, isolated islands, and water so clear the bottom was visible from 100 feet above, they held hands and cried tears of pure joy. Robert's slight tremor seemed to disappear as adrenaline and wonder took precedence over physical limitations. Landing at Landa Jaravaru felt like entering a different world entirely. The resort staff greeted us with traditional Maldivian music, flower garlands, and refreshing drinks that tasted like tropical sunshine. Linda couldn't stop smiling as uniformed employees escorted us through the resort grounds, explaining amenities and pointing out marine life visible in the lagoons surrounding our accommodations. The presidential villa exceeded even my own expectations for luxury and beauty. The overwater bungalow stretched nearly 4,000 square feet over the turquoise lagoon, with glass panels in the floor that provided constant views of colorful fish swimming beneath our feet. The master bedroom featured a king-sized bed facing floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased endless ocean views, while the bathroom included both indoor and outdoor showers overlooking the water. Linda's reaction to seeing our accommodation was immediate and overwhelming. She collapsed into one of the oversized lounge chairs on our private deck, tears streaming down her face as she tried to process the reality of sleeping over the ocean in a space larger than their entire house. "I never dreamed I'd see anything this beautiful," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle waves lapping at the villa's foundation. Robert's joy manifested differently, but just as powerfully. Despite his Parkinson's symptoms, He immediately wanted to explore every corner of the villa, examining the construction, admiring the craftsmanship, and marveling at the engineering required to build luxury accommodations over water. His lifetime of working with his hands gave him deep appreciation for the skill and planning that had created our temporary paradise. The first evening's sunset dinner on our private deck became a sacred moment none of us will ever forget. Our personal chef had prepared Robert's favorite comfort foods, with gourmet presentations that elevated familiar flavors into sophisticated cuisine. Linda couldn't stop talking about how the simple grilled fish reminded her of their early marriage, when they dreamed of traveling to exotic places where such meals were everyday experiences. That night, as we sat on our deck watching stars reflected in the calm ocean, Linda pulled out her travel journal and began writing. "Day 1 in paradise," she wrote, her handwriting shaky with emotion. "I keep thinking this is a dream and I'll wake up in our bedroom in Illinois. Sophia has given us something beyond imagination, beyond what we deserve, beyond what we ever expected from life. I feel like a queen, like royalty, like the most important person in the world." Robert's first attempt at swimming in the lagoon was both hilarious and heartwarming. Had been self-conscious about his tremor and balance issues, worried that his physical limitations would prevent him from fully enjoying water activities. But the warm, shallow water provided perfect conditions for him to float, swim, and move with an ease he hadn't experienced in months. The weightless feeling of swimming in the Indian Ocean gave him temporary relief from symptoms that had been increasingly limiting his daily activities. Linda's first spa experience at the Overwater Treatment Pavilion transformed her understanding of self-care and personal indulgence. She'd spent 60 years caring for others without ever receiving professional pampering, and the massage therapist's skilled touch released tension she'd carried for decades. Afterward, she confessed that she'd felt guilty about enjoying something so luxurious, but the physical relief and emotional rejuvenation convinced her that sometimes accepting care was necessary and beneficial. The photography sessions began immediately as our professional photographer captured candid moments of wonder, joy, and family connection that would become treasured memories long after we returned home. Robert's face while feeding colorful fish from our deck, Linda's expression during her first snorkeling experience, and both their reactions to the over-the-top luxury of our accommodations provided powerful documentation of genuine happiness and gratitude. Phone calls to friends and neighbors back home became daily events, as Robert and Linda shared their experiences with people who'd known them for decades and never seen them enjoy anything approaching luxury. Their excitement was infectious even through international phone connections, and their descriptions of resort amenities, gourmet meals, and tropical beauty brought joy to everyone who heard their stories. My social media posts began in earnest as I shared images of my parents experiencing luxury they'd never imagined possible. The photos captured their authentic emotions: wonder, gratitude, joy, and disbelief that such experiences were actually happening to them. The contrast with typical vacation social media posts was obvious, as their reactions reflected genuine appreciation rather than entitled expectation or status demonstration. Each day brought new adventures and deeper appreciation for the gift we'd been given together. Whether floating in infinity pools that seemed to merge with the horizon, dining on cuisine prepared by world-class chefs, or simply sitting together watching endless sunsets over the Indian Ocean, every moment reinforced the value of sharing success with people who'd made it possible through their sacrifice and love. The explosion began exactly as I'd anticipated, 3 days into our Maldives paradise, when Jessica discovered my Instagram posts during her morning social media scroll. Her initial comment on my photo of Robert and Linda enjoying breakfast on our overwater deck was deceptively casual. "Wow, looks amazing. Didn't know you were traveling." But I could sense the underlying tension in her exclamation points and emoji choices. Within hours, Jessica had researched Four Seasons Maldives pricing and discovered that our presidential villa cost more than most people's annual salaries. Her subsequent Instagram story was a passive-aggressive masterpiece, featuring a sunset photo from their Aspen trip with the caption, "Nothing beats quality family time with the people who've always been there. Some of us understand that memories matter more than money. Blessed to have real relationships built on love, not luxury." The family group chat that had excluded me from Aspen became a digital battlefield when Jessica shared screenshots of my vacation posts. Margaret's response was immediate and venomous. "I cannot believe she's wasting money on those people while claiming she can't afford to invest in her real family's business ventures. This is a slap in the face to everyone who shares her blood. How dare she throw away $28,000 on strangers when her father needs funding for his development projects?" Frank's reaction was even more aggressive, as he calculated the exact cost of our accommodation and compared it to the investment Head requested for his real estate ventures. His text messages to my personal phone became increasingly hostile as he demanded explanations for my irresponsible spending and betrayal of family values. He seemed genuinely outraged that money he considered rightfully his was being spent on people he viewed as undeserving outsiders. David's contribution to the family drama was particularly revealing, as he expressed frustration that his own family had never received such generous treatment, despite years of maintaining relationships with me. His text complained that had been playing the long game with family reconciliation, expecting that patience and loyalty would eventually result in financial benefits that were now being lavished on adoptive parents had never met. The social media war escalated when Margaret began posting nostalgic photos from my childhood, with captions about ungrateful children who forgot their origins and blood connections. Her messages were designed to publicly shame me while maintaining plausible deniability about their true meaning. Comments from her social circle reinforced her narrative that biological family deserved primary loyalty, regardless of past behaviors or current relationships. Jessica's approach was more subtle but equally damaging, as she shared articles about the psychology of adoption and the challenges faced by children who developed misplaced gratitude toward adoptive families. Her posts suggested that my vacation choice represented deep-seated emotional issues that required professional intervention to resolve properly. The phone assault began on day 4 of our vacation when Frank called my cell phone 17 times in 2 hours, leaving increasingly angry voicemails that demanded immediate responses to his concerns about my spending priorities. His messages evolved from disappointment to rage to threats about consequences I would face for choosing adoptive parents over biological family needs. Margaret's calls were more manipulative, featuring tearful performances about how much they'd loved me and how devastated they were to learn about my true feelings toward the family that had given me life. She claimed that seeing my vacation posts had triggered severe depression and anxiety that was affecting her health and requiring medical intervention. The guilt trip campaign reached its peak when David's wife Emma shared a carefully crafted Facebook post about the challenges faced by families trying to reconnect with adopted children who had developed unrealistic expectations about relationships and confused loyalties that prevented healthy family bonding. Her post received dozens of supportive comments from friends who rallied around the narrative of biological family being betrayed by an ungrateful adoptive child. But the most absurd escalation came when Frank threatened legal action, claiming that my adoption had been fraudulent and that any financial success I'd achieved rightfully belonged to my biological family. He contacted his attorney about pursuing claims against my business assets, apparently believing that genetic connections trumped legal documents and decades of family relationships built through love and sacrifice. The breaking point arrived when Margaret fabricated a medical emergency, having Emma call my hotel claiming that Frank had suffered a heart attack and was asking for me in the hospital. The elaborate deception was designed to force me to abandon my vacation and return immediately to Chicago, where they planned to ambush me with emotional manipulation and financial demands. Robert and Linda gradually became aware of the digital warfare being conducted by the Whitmans, though I tried to shield them from the worst attacks during our precious vacation time. Linda's nursing background gave her insight into manipulative behaviors, and she recognized the patterns of emotional abuse that the Whitmans were employing to control and punish me. "Sweetheart," Linda said during one of our sunset conversations, "I've seen this kind of behavior in families dealing with terminal illness or inheritance disputes. People show their true nature when money and control are involved. These people aren't angry because they love you and miss you." Robert's perspective was equally clear, despite his gentle nature and tendency to see the best in everyone. In 40 years of work, "I've met plenty of people who thought they deserved things they hadn't earned," he said, while we watched fish swimming beneath our glass floors. "The difference between earned and entitled is respect. They don't respect you as a person. They just want to control you as a resource." The contrast between the Whitmans' manufactured crisis and the genuine peace of our Maldives paradise couldn't have been more stark. While they were conducting social media attacks and legal threats from their comfortable suburban homes, we were experiencing once-in-a-lifetime adventures in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Their desperation to control my choices only reinforced how right it'd been to invest my resources in people who celebrated my success rather than trying to exploit it. My social media responses remained dignified and positive, focusing on gratitude for the opportunity to share experiences with people who'd shaped my character and supported my dreams. Each post about Robert and Linda's joy provided a stark contrast to the Whitmans' bitter complaints and manipulative behaviors. The public could clearly see the difference between authentic love and entitled demands. By the end of our first week in paradise, the Whitmans had succeeded only in demonstrating their true nature to anyone following the situation. Their public tantrums, legal threats, and emotional manipulation tactics revealed exactly why I'd chosen to exclude them from my success and include the people who'd actually earned my love and loyalty through decades of sacrifice and support. Support for my vacation choice began pouring in from unexpected sources as the Whitmans' social media campaign backfired spectacularly. Maria Santos, my best friend since high school who'd witnessed both families' treatment of me over the years, posted a detailed thread exposing Margaret's racist comments about those people and questioning whether the Martinez family was appropriate for someone with my potential. Maria's revelations included screenshots of conversations where Margaret had suggested that my success was being wasted on people who couldn't appreciate luxury or sophistication. The biological family's classist and prejudiced attitudes toward my adoptive parents became public record, destroying their carefully constructed image as loving relatives concerned about family values and financial responsibility. Robert's brother Carlos, whom the Whitmans had never bothered to meet despite 2 years of supposed family reconciliation, provided the most damaging evidence of Frank's true character. Carlos revealed that Frank had contacted him months earlier, attempting to borrow money using my business success as collateral for loans he couldn't otherwise qualify for. Frank had actually used my relationship with him to fraudulently obtain credit, forging documents that suggested it guaranteed his debts. The investigation that followed Carlos' revelations uncovered a pattern of financial deception that explained the Whitmans' desperate attempts to access my resources. Despite their wealthy appearance and exclusive lifestyle, the family was deeply in debt due to over-leveraging their real estate investments and maintaining appearances they couldn't afford. Jessica's scheme to sabotage my business became apparent when several clients reported receiving anonymous messages, questioning my professional ethics, and suggesting that my success had come through family connections rather than legitimate skill. The messages included fabricated stories about my business practices and implied that working with my agency would damage their reputations through association with family drama and questionable character. The private investigator I hired to trace these attacks discovered that Jessica had created fake social media accounts to spread negative reviews of my company on professional networking sites. Her campaign included posts on LinkedIn suggesting that my marketing strategies were unethical and that my client list had been acquired through nepotism and manipulation rather than competitive bidding and proven results. David's wife Emma provided the most surprising support when she privately contacted me to apologize for her husband's behavior and reveal the family's true financial situation. Emma had grown tired of watching her in-laws manipulate and exploit relationships for monetary gain, and she provided detailed documentation of their debts, failed investments, and fraudulent business practices. According to Emma, the Whitman family estate was in foreclosure proceedings that had been temporarily halted through legal maneuvering and delay tactics. Their country club memberships were past due. Their luxury vehicles were leased under terms they couldn't maintain, and their exclusive vacations were funded through credit lines secured against properties they were losing to creditors. Margaret's latest manipulation involved fabricating a serious medical diagnosis to generate sympathy and guilt that might convince me to return early from our vacation. Emma provided medical records proving that Margaret's supposed cancer scare was entirely fictional, created with the help of a corrupt physician who had been writing false diagnoses in exchange for payment. The revelation that Margaret had lied about terminal illness to manipulate my emotions was the final evidence needed to prove their complete lack of character and integrity. This woman had been willing to fake cancer to guilt me into abandoning the vacation I'd planned for my real parents, demonstrating a level of emotional abuse that crossed every moral boundary. Frank's gambling addiction became public knowledge when Emma shared documentation of his casino debts and sports betting losses that had consumed their savings and equity. His real estate investment failures weren't due to market conditions or bad luck, but rather to his compulsive need to risk family assets on increasingly desperate attempts to recover gambling losses through property speculation. The irony of Frank demanding investment money to fund business ventures when he'd already lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to gambling addiction wasn't lost on anyone following the situation. His anger about my vacation spending was particularly hypocritical, given that he'd literally gambled away more money than I'd spent on our entire Maldives experience. Robert's wisdom during this period of revelation and conflict provided the perspective I needed to maintain dignity while protecting myself from further manipulation. "Some people see your success and want to tear it down to their level," he said during one of our morning coffee conversations overlooking the Indian Ocean. "Others see your success and celebrate how high you've climbed. The difference tells you everything you need to know about their character." Linda's nursing experience had exposed her to families destroyed by greed and manipulation, giving her insight into the psychological patterns driving the Whitmans' behavior. "I've seen families torn apart when money becomes more important than love," she explained while we floated in our infinity pool. "These people never loved you as a person. They loved the idea of what you could do for them. That's not family. That's exploitation." The contrast between the Whitmans' desperate financial situation and my parents' modest but stable life became another lesson in the difference between appearance and reality. While my adoptive parents had lived within their means and built security through hard work and careful saving, my biological family had created an illusion of wealth that required constant manipulation and exploitation to maintain. Support from my business community was overwhelming, as clients and colleagues rallied around my choice to honor the people who'd actually supported my success. Professional contacts who'd met Robert and Linda at company events shared stories about their warmth, pride in my achievements, and obvious role in shaping my character and work ethic. The social media response shifted dramatically in my favor as people shared their own stories about chosen family versus biological relatives, adoptive parents who'd provided unconditional love, and the importance of investing in relationships built on mutual respect rather than genetic coincidence. My story resonated with thousands of people who'd faced similar conflicts between blood connections and chosen bonds. Emma's decision to support me publicly, despite being married into the Whitman family, took tremendous courage and provided the most credible testimony about their true nature. Her willingness to risk her own marriage to expose their manipulation and fraud demonstrated that even people within their inner circle recognized how toxic and destructive their behavior had become. The revelation that the Whitmans had spent years planning to exploit my success while maintaining the facade of loving reconciliation was heartbreaking but liberating. Understanding their true motivations allowed me to stop feeling guilty about disappointing them and start focusing on the genuine relationships that deserved my time, energy, and resources. Our return from paradise should have been a gentle transition back to reality, but the Whitmans had orchestrated an ambush that turned Chicago O'Hare International Airport into a battlefield. They'd somehow obtained our flight information, positioning themselves in the international arrivals area with what appeared to be a carefully planned performance designed to maximize public sympathy and pressure. Margaret stood near the customs exit holding a poster-sized photo of me as a child, tears streaming down her face as she wailed about her lost daughter who'd been brainwashed by people who didn't understand our family's love. Frank paced nearby, shouting into his phone about legal action and family betrayal, while Jessica documented everything for social media, ensuring their victim narrative would have maximum reach and impact. Robert and Linda emerged from customs looking relaxed and glowing, from 10 days of luxury and adventure, completely unprepared for the emotional assault waiting in the arrival area. The contrast between their genuine happiness and the Whitmans' manufactured drama was immediately obvious to everyone in the terminal, including airport security personnel who'd been alerted to potential disturbance. "Sophia!" Margaret shrieked the moment she saw us, rushing forward with outstretched arms and theatrical sobs that echoed through the crowded terminal. "My baby! My precious daughter! We've been so worried about you. These people have poisoned your mind against your real family. We love you so much, and it breaks our hearts to see you throwing away your heritage for strangers." Frank's approach was more aggressive, positioning himself between us and the exit while demanding immediate explanations for what he called the ultimate betrayal of family trust and loyalty. His voice carried across the terminal as he accused me of stealing money that rightfully belonged to the Whitman family and wasting resources that could have solved their financial emergencies. The scene attracted airport security within minutes, as other passengers complained about the disruption and emotional intensity of the confrontation. Several travelers began recording the incident on their phones, capturing every moment of Margaret's performance and Frank's increasingly threatening behavior toward my elderly adoptive parents. My response was calm, dignified, and perfectly audible to everyone within 50 feet of our location. "I spent 10 days in the Maldives with my real parents," I said clearly, my arm around Linda's shoulders as she stood bewildered by the attack. "These are the people who raised me, sacrificed for me, and loved me unconditionally for 24 years. The people screaming in this airport are biological relatives who reconnected with me 2 years ago specifically to exploit my financial success." I then presented the documentation ID prepared for exactly this moment. Printed screenshots of Frank's gambling debts, Margaret's fabricated medical records, Jessica's attempts to sabotage my business, and their group text messages mocking my exclusion from family events. Each piece of evidence was clearly labeled and dated, providing undeniable proof of their manipulation and fraud. "Frank Whitman has gambling debts exceeding $300,000, I announced, holding up his casino statements for the growing crowd to see. "Margaret Whitman faked a cancer diagnosis to manipulate my emotions. Jessica Whitman has been spreading false information about my business to damage my professional reputation. These people see me as a source of funding, not as a daughter they love." Margaret's theatrical sobbing transformed into genuine rage as her carefully constructed victim narrative crumbled under the weight of documented evidence. "You ungrateful little bitch," she screamed, her mask finally slipping to reveal the entitled fury beneath. "We gave you life. We gave you the genetics that made you successful. You owe us everything you've achieved." Frank's response was even more revealing as he abandoned all pretense of loving concern and focused purely on financial demands. "That money you wasted on vacation belongs to this family," he shouted, pointing aggressively at Robert and Linda. "These people contributed nothing to your success. We deserve compensation for the investment we made in your potential." Jessica's role became clear as she continued filming, apparently believing the confrontation would somehow support their narrative rather than expose their true nature. Her commentary for the video included demands that I return the money and respect my real family obligations, completely undermining any sympathy their initial performance might have generated. Airport security intervention was swift and decisive as Frank's behavior became increasingly threatening toward Robert, whose Parkinson's tremor intensified under stress. Police officers arrived within minutes, having been called by multiple witnesses who felt the situation was escalating toward potential violence. The contrast between the Whitmans' aggressive behavior and my family's calm dignity was obvious to everyone present. The removal of Frank and Margaret from the terminal was captured on multiple phones and quickly uploaded to social media, where their entitled demands and threatening behavior went viral within hours. Jessica's own video documentation of the confrontation became evidence against them, as viewers could clearly hear their financial motivations and see their complete lack of genuine concern for my well-being. Local news stations picked up the story after travelers shared videos of the airport confrontation, turning our family drama into a public discussion about adoption, family loyalty, and the difference between blood relations and chosen connections. The overwhelming public response supported my choice to honor the people who'd actually raised me rather than biological relatives, who'd tried to exploit my success. Robert and Linda's reaction to witnessing the Whitmans' true nature was one of protective anger and deep sadness. Robert, despite his physical limitations, positioned himself between Frank and Linda when the threats began, while Linda's nursing instincts kicked in as she tried to de-escalate the emotional violence being directed at their daughter. "I've never seen people behave like that," Linda said during our drive home from the airport. "The way they talked about money and ownership and genetics, like you were property instead of a human being they claimed to love. No wonder you needed distance from them. No one deserves to be treated as a resource to be exploited." The business impact of the public confrontation was entirely positive, as potential clients reached out to express support for my values and character. Multiple companies specifically requested meetings after seeing how ID handled the situation with dignity, despite intense provocation, viewing my loyalty to my adoptive parents as evidence of integrity they wanted in their professional relationships. Social media response was overwhelmingly supportive, as people shared similar experiences with biological relatives who'd emerged from nowhere to claim ownership of success they hadn't contributed to creating. My story resonated particularly strongly with adopted individuals. Woad faced pressure to prioritize blood relations over the families. Woad actually raised them with love and sacrifice. The legal consequences for the Whitmans were severe, as their fraudulent business practices, false medical claims, and attempts to damage my professional reputation attracted attention from multiple authorities. Frank's use of my name as collateral for unauthorized loans constituted identity theft, while Margaret's fabricated medical records involved healthcare fraud that carried serious criminal penalties. 6 months later, their financial house of cards had completely collapsed with foreclosure proceedings, bankruptcy filings, and criminal charges that made headlines throughout the Chicago business community. The contrast between their dramatic fall and my continued success with the support of my real family provided a perfect ending to their attempts at manipulation and exploitation. Robert's health had actually improved following our Maldives vacation, as the stress reduction and relaxation had positive effects on his Parkinson's symptoms that lasted well beyond our return home. Linda had returned to work with renewed energy and confidence, feeling valued and appreciated in ways that improved her patient care and professional satisfaction. 6 months after our life-changing Maldives adventure, the transformation in all our lives was profound and lasting. Robert's health had stabilized significantly with the help of new treatments we could now afford, while Linda had reduced her work hours to a manageable schedule that allowed time for the art classes she'd always dreamed of taking. The vacation had been more than a luxury experience. It had been a catalyst for positive changes that continued rippling through our family's daily life. The annual tradition it established became something we all looked forward to, with anticipation and careful planning. Each year would bring a new destination chosen specifically to accommodate Robert's physical needs, while providing experiences that honored their decades of sacrifice and hard work. Our second adventure was already booked, a luxury cruise through the Mediterranean with accessible accommodations and shore excursions designed for travelers with mobility considerations. The scholarship fund I'd established in Robert and Linda's honor had grown beyond my initial investment, attracting donations from people inspired by our story and their example of unconditional parental love. The fund specifically supported adopted children pursuing higher education, recognizing that many faced unique financial challenges when biological families couldn't or wouldn't provide educational support. Margaret's final attempt at reconciliation came through mutual acquaintances, who'd grown uncomfortable with the public nature of our family drama. She'd crafted a carefully worded apology that acknowledged misunderstandings while avoiding responsibility for the manipulation and fraud that had characterized her behavior. The letter requested a private meeting to rebuild our relationship on healthier foundations and suggested family therapy to address our communication issues. My response was firm but not cruel, establishing boundaries that protected my real family while offering the Whitmans a path toward redemption that didn't involve financial exploitation or emotional manipulation. I made it clear that any future contact would need to respect my chosen family relationships and demonstrate genuine change rather than strategic positioning for future benefit. The wedding planning process had become a celebration of chosen family, as Michael, my fiancé of 3 years, embraced Robert and Linda as the grandparents our future children would know and love. His parents had immediately bonded with my adoptive family over shared values and work ethics, creating an extended support network that felt natural and nurturing, rather than obligated or transactional. Robert walked me down the aisle 6 months later, his pride evident despite the slight tremor that had become part of our family's normal rhythm. Linda designed my wedding bouquet, using flowers from the garden shed finally had time to cultivate after reducing her work hours. Their involvement in every wedding detail reinforced that real family was defined by love and commitment rather than biological coincidence. The grandchildren who arrived 2 years later knew only one set of grandparents, the couple who'd sacrificed everything to raise their mother, and who now spoiled them with the wisdom and patience that came from understanding what truly mattered in life. Robert's workshop became a magical place where little hands learned to use tools safely, while Linda's kitchen filled with the sounds of children learning to bake cookies and fold dumplings. Christmas morning at the Martinez house became an annual gathering point for our chosen family, with the Maldives photos prominently displayed on the mantelpiece as proof that dreams do come true when shared with people who deserve them. The contrast between our warm, inclusive celebrations and the Whitmans' continued financial struggles and family discord served as a constant reminder of the choices that had led us to such different outcomes. The business success that had funded our paradise vacation continued growing as clients and partners were drawn to the values and integrity that had guided my personal decisions. The loyalty I'd shown to my adoptive parents became a professional asset as people recognized that someone who honored family commitments would likely honor business obligations with the same dedication and reliability. Robert's Parkinson's symptoms remained manageable with proper medical care and stress reduction, allowing him to enjoy his grandchildren and participate in family activities for years longer than his original prognosis had suggested. The financial security provided by our success had literally extended his quality of life by ensuring access to the best treatments and reducing the anxiety that had worsened his condition. Linda's artistic talents, dormant for decades while she focused on survival and child-rearing, flourished in ways that surprised everyone, including herself. Her paintings of tropical scenes inspired by our Maldives memories were exhibited at local galleries, with proceeds donated to organizations supporting adoptive families and medical research for movement disorders. The lesson learned through this journey extended far beyond family dynamics to encompass fundamental questions about loyalty, gratitude, and the difference between earned and entitled relationships. Money hadn't bought happiness, but it had revealed character and provided the resources to honor people who'd demonstrated their worth through decades of selfless love, rather than months of manipulative demands. Frank and Margaret's continued attempts to claim victim status fell on increasingly deaf ears, as their pattern of exploitation and manipulation became widely known throughout their former social circles. Their exclusion from events and organizations they'd once dominated provided a stark lesson about the consequences of treating people as resources rather than human beings deserving of respect. Jessica's business efforts had been permanently damaged by her attempts to sabotage my professional reputation, as her own clients discovered her willingness to engage in dishonest practices for personal gain. The reputation she'd tried to destroy had actually grown stronger, while her own credibility had been permanently compromised by her choices during our family conflict. David's marriage to Emma had survived primarily because she'd chosen to support truth over family loyalty, demonstrating the kind of character that attracted respect and trust rather than demanding it through blood relations. Their children would grow up understanding that integrity mattered more than genetics, and that real family was built through consistent love rather than biological accident. The community that had formed around our story included thousands of people who'd faced similar choices between biological relatives and chosen family, adoptive parents who'd had been validated by seeing their sacrifices recognized and honored, and successful individuals who'd had been inspired to invest their resources in people who'd had actually earned their loyalty rather than simply claimed it through DNA. My final message to anyone facing similar family pressures was simple but profound. The best revenge against people who try to exploit your love isn't hatred or cruelty, but rather living well with those who truly deserve your loyalty and commitment. Success shared with genuine family members creates joy that multiplies, while success hoarded or given to unworthy recipients creates nothing but emptiness and resentment. The Christmas morning scene that had become our annual tradition perfectly captured the lesson learned through this incredible journey. Robert sat in his favorite chair, grandchildren on his lap as he read stories with the patient voice of someone who understood that time with loved ones was the most precious gift possible. Linda bustled around the kitchen, preparing feast meals that fed both body and soul, while photos from exotic destinations reminded us all that dreams do come true when shared with the right people. The contrast with the Whitmans' isolated, bitter holiday celebrations miles away in their foreclosed mansion served as a reminder that money without character creates nothing lasting, while character without money can still build legacies that span generations and inspire communities. Looking back at that moment of devastation when I'd been excluded from the Aspen trip for not being real family, I could only feel gratitude for the clarity that rejection had provided. It had forced me to examine my priorities, recognize manipulation for what it was, and understand that the greatest honor I could give my success was sharing it with people who'd shaped my character rather than people who simply shared my DNA. What started as revenge against biological relatives who'd tried to exclude me had evolved into something far more beautiful, a celebration of unconditional love, a recognition of genuine sacrifice, and a demonstration that real family is always chosen through actions rather than inherited through genetics. The $28,000 investment in Paradise had returned dividends in joy, gratitude, and family bonds that would last multiple lifetimes and touch countless lives beyond our immediate circle. As I sit here writing this story while Robert teaches his newest grandchild to whittle wood shavings and Linda hums while tending her prize-winning garden, I'm reminded that the best investments aren't financial but emotional, that the best returns aren't monetary but relational, and that the best revenge is simply living well with people who deserve every blessing you can share. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between biological family and the people who actually raised you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know how you define real family. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family, loyalty, and the importance of honoring the people who truly deserve our love. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not obligated to maintain relationships with people who treat them poorly, regardless of blood connections. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that sometimes the most beautiful revenge is simply choosing to be happy with the people who've earned the right to share your success. Until next time, invest your love wisely, and never apologize for honoring those who've honored you.